as much value as we possibly can into the actual businesses that we're trying to get in there. For most people out there, the biggest problem that we've got isn't the fact that we don't know what to do. It's almost a level of obscurity that we have. So one of the big aims that we've got at the minute is trying to make sure that we're delivering. So good morning to YouTube, good morning to LinkedIn, good morning to Facebook, good morning to Clubhouse, good morning to Instagram. It is wonderful to have everyone here with us. We're going to pop you there, Insta. And what we're going to be doing here is to break down today in more detail exactly how follow-up can be more beneficial to us, what we can do. Now, there's a lot of people out there, when they're at the stage, good morning over on Instagram, morning everyone on all the other social medias that are out there. So here's the big thing that we've got. We've got to work out initially in your business, what are we going to be classing and what do we qualify as the follow-up itself? For the vast majority of people, it's really easy to focus on that one initial contact that we have with people, that initial point in time, that first meeting, the email you sent out, the conversation that's come through, you've asked for a meeting, you've had a first appointment, and all of these different areas are all really, really important part of that overall sales process. But the biggest problem for most people, they don't have a degree of a follow-up hustle, if you will. Now, I'm not a big fan of the word hustle, but we know what we mean when we talk about that, right? It can be a bit of a pain in the backside. It can be something which is a bit of an issue. It can be something which, for most people out there, they feel uncomfortable, like it's a hardship to actually go off and follow up with people. Here's the big problem that you've got. When we look at the stats, when we look at the numbers, if you're in a position where, as a business owner, as someone out there who is trying to deliver a great product on a lifetime overall view, we need to make sure that we're going out and doing that. And we need to do it in the best possible way. Right, bear with me just a second. Sorry, Laura, did you just message me saying you need to do something?
Yes, this room is the wrong one. There were two. Let me see. There's another room open, so I will have to see if I can move people across.
So we just leave this one. It's already set up, is it?
The other one is already, yeah, but it's fine because the other one's under the group. This one wasn't. I'm not sure why. This room kicked me out to start with, but then let's just stay here. We're here. I'll go and tell the others to come across here, David.
No worries. All right, then we'll just carry on. We'll carry on for now. Thanks, Lauren. So, as with anything in life, we have technical issues. So we're streaming this on Clubhouse as well as you lovely lot, which are here with on Facebook and with LinkedIn and with YouTube and with Instagram. The joys of technology. When we're using Clubhouse, for anyone who doesn't know what Clubhouse is an audio-only drop-in app. It's a fantastic app, but especially for people that are entrepreneurs or business owners, which is typically why people are following me. If you're looking to get involved and into areas where people are actually talking your language, talking about things that you need, talking things that you have that they need, it's a great networking place of where you need to go within your business so that you can move things forward. And what you have in each one of these areas, you actually get rooms, what we class them as. And in these rooms, you can host your own events, you can have your own talks, you can have your own networks, you can have your own conversations. So that's the big thing about what we're doing with Clubhouse. But we'll carry on now and we'll just bumble our way through on what we need to do. So for anyone who's just joining in, we're talking today about follow-up. We're talking about how and why follow-up is so important. What is really the follow-up? What are some of the key steps you can use within your business to get more effective in and around the follow-up area? Because there's a lot of reasons why people don't follow up to start with. And there's a big stat we read recently. And in this stat, they said that 60% of customers say no 4 times before saying yes, whereas 48% of salespeople never make a single follow-up attempt. So just think about that for the numbers. Imagine all of your potential, imagine 1,000 of your potential clients stood in a room. If you know that 60% of those 1,000 people, so 600 of those of 1,000 people will say no 4 times before they're ready to buy. That means you're alienating people out there from buying your product or service. Now, me personally, I can think of a huge amount of times recently where in my own life, my personal life, people have had to follow up with me to get my business. And if you're not going to follow up, we're going to miss out on a huge amount of opportunities. My gardener followed up with me. I needed a gardener, right? But I was busy. My garden was an absolute raging mess. And I didn't have the chance to complete on this guy who quoted me and what he was going to do and all the other jazz. He phoned me 3 times, left me a message, sent me a text, then he gave me another quick call. And his last call was, hey, don't think this is of interest now. And I was like, crap. No, it is of interest. I do need your product. I do need your service. I do need your help. It just wasn't a high enough up on my priority list at that time. Now, think about how many times that's happened in your life. How many times it's been something you've needed, and that when you've remembered it, you thought, crap, I need that. Oh, I'll get around to that later. Something else comes in our window. Something else comes in our way. Something else comes in front of us, which is a more urgent matter. So it doesn't mean the fact that people don't want your product or service. But the big problem we've got is in our mind, we feel like we're being pushy. We feel that as a business owner, we're pushing our product or service onto people that don't need it. And we've got to really change that lens. And that's what I'm hoping we can do today. And we're going to show you some really simple and effective things that you can do to help you get to that next stage within the business. But what I want you to think about is your responsibility as a business owner to be a persistent asset to your prospects. And what I mean by being a persistent asset is letting people know that you are there when they need them. If you don't go off and have things in place within your business, you're going to miss out on 60% of those people. Whether that's coming through, and we're going to go through in a minute, there's a huge amount of different ways that you can be following up. But what we've got to find is a happy balance between providing a clear and concise business need to someone and you being a pushy pain in the backside. So what you've got to make sure is, how are we going to follow up initially? What are going to be the steps when we follow up? We know that we're being a more effective person within our business. What are we doing today to move that needle forward? If you imagine right now, think about the whole scale of your client journey from they've only just heard you. Let's say Elliot, for an example. Elliot has 50 people that only got exposed to who he is and what he does 2 days ago. So they're really in the early process. What could Elliot now do to help move the needle and engage that person to a higher degree to get them more interested to the idea of using your product or service? We could have other people that are in there that have been hearing Elliot for 5 months. So they already know him, they like him, they trust him, but they're already accustomed to hearing him every day. So there's not an urgency factor around them making an actual decision. And that's two of the big boundaries, that when we're in the follow-up process, we've got to get more effective at knowing what we're trying to actually achieve. What is the purpose of this follow-up? Too many people just have a blanket follow-up. And it can be as bad as, hey, just following up with you about X, just following up with you about Y. And that's not what we want to make sure that we're doing. We've got to forget and we've got to consider a huge amount of things when we're going through all these processes. If an unexpected problem had come up so that person didn't buy your product or service. I had someone yesterday, they just completed on a £12,000 purchase with our coaching, who was in contact with us 6 months ago. And they'd had a spiral of problems that had kept coming. Something with their family, with their business, their car engine blew up. So they bought a new car and all of this stuff. So it just wasn't the right timing. And when she messaged me 2 days ago, just sent me a voice note. Hey, David, sorry for being a pain. I'm ready to get started now. Thanks for keeping in touch. Now, the vast majority of those communications, I did not send. They were sent in an automatic process, but they were done in a way that felt like a natural communication that spoke to the needs and the requirements of that person. So whilst that person was going through and dealing with their problems, dealing with their issues, looking after their family, running their business, doing the school run, taking their kids out, going out for dinners, they had an impact from me in a way that it kept inside of what they're trying to do without them feeling like I was hounding them. And there's a scale between that. If you're going to get people at the moment and you've been on a strategy call and you've built up a huge amount of interest and they're really white hot, the initial follow-up is going to be more intense because their temperature is so high, their level of interest and desire is so high, they are far closer to making a decision. But then after that 10-day window, if it's something where you're like, okay, after 10 days, I know my clients are less likely to be making a decision now, and there's going to be one of 3 reasons why they haven't bought from me. What are those main reasons going to be? Is it down to just timing? Is it the lack of value? Do they not feel the product's going to work for them? They're unsure about certain areas. So at that point, we've got to adapt and change the follow-up process that we've got because we're talking to a different pain point. Now, here's the big problem for most people. We set boundaries on ourselves with false assumptions of what we think is actually the main problem. How many people out there have gone off, contacted people that were ideal potential customers and had a no BS conversation with them? Done a survey, done a review, found out the reasons they didn't buy. And you literally lay the cards out on the table. Hey, listen, this is not me trying to handle any objections. I'm not going to try and pitch you at the end of this. But I'd love to just know there's normally one of 3 reasons why someone doesn't buy from us. And here they are. A, B, and C. Was it one of those or was it something else? Now, when you understand exactly where those pain points are, you can build a follow-up process that talks directly to the needs of that person. Now, if they give a response around, oh, it just didn't feel right, typically when something doesn't feel right, the way the message is actually coming off is wrong rather than the way you necessarily follow up. Because if they're engaging in your information, if they're engaging in what you're doing, but they're just not handing over the money, if they're not going to execution on actually taking action on your purchase, when people feel it wasn't right, imagine it like a bumpy road. They want to go on the journey, but the bumpy road, something's just not flowing quite right. And that's often going to be the language or the way you're approaching it. So what we need to do at that point is potentially open up and revisit personality types around who you're actually selling to. I see a huge amount of people that are very relationship, especially in the entrepreneurial space. They're heavy on relationship in their personality type. That's great. But if you're dealing with a lot of people that are very technical, your follow-up needs to reflect that. Because if you've got to hire people that are analytical buyers, you can be really relationship and they can love you, but in their mind to feel a committed level, a level of commitment that is actionable, they're going to need to see the stats, the numbers, the charts. So it's vitally important that if you're not getting the flow that you need, once we've done your stage 1 follow-up, break it down into that next level and start thinking about more about our personality types and our buying types so that we can really get to that next stage. Now, once we've got all of these ideas broke down, we're going to go run into this in a minute, is how we can automate all of this into a clear and concise way, but it's working in the background and keeping that communication moving forward. I want you guys to forget about a number of things. Now, there are exceptions to the rule on this. But thinking that people are actually going to reach out and contact you when you're new in business is very, very slim. Now, if people do outreach to you, that's great. But what you want to do is think on the other side of it and think a little bit more. If the people do outreach to us, great. We don't need to worry about follow-up. But let's imagine hypothetically that the vast amount of people, their need going to need to be moved either in a financial state or an emotional state higher from where they are when they receive your email or your text or your message, to get them to take action. And here's the big thing with your follow-up. Your follow-up is not there to sell people. And I want people to realize this. When you are following up in an automated process, you are not using that process, unless it's a very low-ticketed product, to get them to make a buying decision. What we're trying to do with our automation is to elevate the level of interest they've got from what we class as a stagnant nature, whereas they might like it, they might want it, they might need it, but they haven't been elevated in an emotional state to a high enough level to take action. What you're aiming to do with that follow-up is to reignite it like a little bit of Kindle, to get a little bit more of a flame going, to get them to ask a question. Actually, could this work for me? I know some people that use a follow-up and they'll go really bold to be like, that won't work for me. But it moves them in an emotional way. But then when they come into that process, they start wondering, they start asking that question. So we've got to think, what are some of the conversations that we can have? What are some of the things that we can talk about? What are some of the things with your product or your service that will move the needle either way? That might be a big claim. That can be testimonials. That can be proven track record. That can be studies on what you've done. That can be using big sources of external information that are reliable sources, that if they heard it from them, they would believe it more. And these combined over a clear follow-up process, excuse me, are all individual areas that are going to help us move it forward. So when you know where your people don't buy, then we can start creating a process that's on an automated system that's going to allow you to move the needle to a better level. Now, a lot of the time with your follow-up process, you aren't fully aware of exactly where people are in that process. So when you're looking at it, it depends on the stage of the sale pipeline. Now, for some people in network marketing and other areas out there, the idea of a pipeline is very different. If we're talking about the sale whole process pipeline, there's different stages where we're at. So think of where you're at now. Say you're going to go and focus on an area of your database, an area of the leads, the people are in your arena. If you've got lead acquisition, so your lead acquisition is when a lead first fills in a form or takes in some degree of action to build a relationship with you. Here, we've got to respond quickly to strike while that motivation is hot. You also need to be able to confirm and follow up in an appointment to take that next step. Follow-up isn't always about the deal. It's about the process of where we are now to that next stage. So if you've got your lead acquisition stage and you go, okay, once a lead comes in, what is something that we can do in a prompt and a fast way to get them to take action? Here's the big one. What's one key pain point that your clients are facing right now? What could you get them to do if they come in on a lead generation, on a magnet for a download, that's going to be an additional pain point that those people that wanted X product that you have, your lead magnet, would also be facing? Now, when you've used that automated as a follow-up, you're going to get them because they've already got a high level of motivation around what their pain point is. They've already got their brain switched on to a solution. They're looking for it. They've clicked on there. And this is why things like ClickFunnels do so well, because they bring you in at a very early stage. If anyone has never gone on to ClickFunnels, you've probably been in someone's funnel. And when you got onto that funnel and there was something that was a ridiculous offer for 99p, and it was A, B, and C, and it's classed what supermarkets class as a loss leader. It's potentially something which is worth, say, £50 and they give it to you for £1. Why do they do that? Because once they've got you to take action on that first one, they have a very clear and concise follow-up for after all of those sections. They're going to bring you through a product ladder that's going to get you to that next stage. So that could be something, but on a lead acquisition, on a lead magnet, they've got one big hook, which is their loss leader. Then we put in there a degree of follow-ups after that point that's going to move that needle through. So next up, I'm going to have a little sip of water. We've got our lead prioritization. Your follow-up messaging will depend on information that you actually have on the prospect and your buyer, as well as any actions that they might have took. Now, this means when you've got people that are coming into your CRM, so your database, if you haven't got one, go onto HubSpot. It's the most simple thing to do. But what we need to do is you need to work out when people come to your audience, there's going to be levels of prioritization of where they're at. If you've got something like a type form page, one of the best things that you can do is adding a multiple choice question into there. Now, that could be based on either a demand, a requirement, or on a budget. Because if you've got a demand or a price or a budget, something around those areas, you can then take those 3 different options and you know where to take them at that point. For example, if you're a consultant, if you're a coach, and you've got a £250 product, a £5,000 product, and a £20,000 product, if you had a question that comes through on your process that identifies at the earliest stage a hypothetical question. This could be, hypothetically, if you were to invest into your business to achieve X, how much would you be prepared to spend on it? £250, £5,000, £50,000, whatever it might be. And based off of the answer at this early stage of your prioritization, you can then work out what the next step's going to be. And here's why. If you're selling a £250 product, but what I'm looking for is something more in depth, that's going to be a higher budget, I will alienate some of those people from that follow-up process because they'll feel like it's not the right option. Imagine you've got a £5 million a year business and you're looking for a problem to fix X. The £250 solution for many businesses, people will just discount that. But if you're a new starter, if you're a person without a budget, the opposite will happen. The £250 option is going to be more appealing. So then what we can do is based on each one of these 3 options, we can work out where that client is now and what is the key messaging that we're going to have after this point that we can automate and bring them through. Now, with a CRM like HubSpot or Pipedrive and many others, you can actually tag on your type form a reference for them. So when this lead comes through, it'll have a reference based off of the answers that they've got. Now you've got a clear identifier of who this type of person is, what their needs are, and then how you can best assist them without rubbing them up the wrong way or offering the wrong product, which is where most people are going wrong. Okay, so I hope this is all making sense so far. Next stage we need to focus on is what are you going to do once the discussion has actually begun? Now, if you've got a higher ticketed product, people are coming into your product, into your funnel, and then they're having a conversation. What happens once that first conversation happens? If that first conversation, you're qualifying them for an interest, they think you're a great guy or gal, they go off then and they think, do you know what? I'm thinking about hiring that person. We now need to know what funnel, what are we going to do with that person at this stage? What is going to be the things that are going to move the needle after that first conversation? For most points at this stage, having something which is a clear video that you can use. Anyone wants to see an example of this, go to Tusta, tusta.biz, B-I-Z, and you can see, and we use this at this stage. When people are coming in for a conversation and we're engaging in a conversation and we're talking about potential ideas, as soon as people start thinking about money, people often go into the pack mentality and they want to see at that point who else has done this already. So if you've got at this stage on an early discussion, setting up that after the conversation you've just had, you've got a website, a page, a video that's got a series of testimonials that talks precisely about what that pain point is for that specific person, that is going to massively increase the chance of the next engagement being successful. So we've already gotten through. We've got what we're doing with our lead prioritization. Now we've got them on a phone call. We've done our qualification. We've done our fact finding. We've established that this person is going to be someone that we can now work with. Now we've got them on. We've sent them a link. This is automated straight off the bat. You've got them on a page which is going to show them a video, a breakdown. It could be your office. It could be you working with a client. It can be an interview directly talking about how I nearly didn't hire X because I was worried about Y. And this is what happened next. I did this. This was the results. And now I have X. So, for example, I have it with coaching. People will come in. They're not up for spending £10,000, £15,000 on coaching. Not because they can't afford it, but because they are concerned that they might not make enough back. So we have a video, which is a live interview that was recorded with, I think there's 15 of these on one website. And that video talks about different parts of there. So when we took the testimonial, we've asked precise questions. We've let the client talk about what their experience was. And then we bring that in on the automated funnel based around the budget that they've got, around the pain point that they have. And then you follow it up with that person. So when we're talking about how to get this automated, it works really simply. If I'm on a conversation now and it's a discovery call, and I say to you, okay, great, we've spoke for 5 minutes, 10 minutes. We've identified your pain points, your problems. So that person doesn't feel pressured. We say, hey, listen, what I'd like to do is send you over some details to help you feel a bit more reassured about what we've done. And I'd like to reconvene in the next 48 hours to present to you an option that could work. Would you be open to that? Most of the time, people are going to be saying yes. So what happens is in your Zoom link, if you've done it on Zoom, you can set up the reminder, the follow-up email that will go up as a thank you email. And you schedule that. So literally the minute that finishes, 10 minutes later, that they get a message saying, hey, as promised, here's the video I'd love you to watch. This talks about, and you give specifics. This talks about how Julie did X with Y and meant B because we did this. This has now happened. And I want to show you in more detail. You're already booked in for our call on X, and that's automated. Now, if you're not using that thank you email as a way to follow up, to bridge that gap, you're missing out. So now we've got them booked in for our second call. They've got a video that's come through automated, which is breaking down the pain points that they've got. Now, here's the smart thing. We spoke the other week about our Calendly booking. For anyone who hasn't seen it, we spoke about a Calendly booking system, but you can set up text reminders. Now, you can set up a text reminder to go out 24 hours and 1 hour before. So let's look at our process. We've got people in. We've got a lead prioritization. We've worked out which one of the 3 that they're in. That's automated. We've given them some automation. We've got them now booked in on our first call. They've had a text reminder before the call. We've had a quick 10-minute call. Then we've arranged a follow-up call 48 hours later. We now have an automated process, which is going to shine on those people the pain points for a video automated testimonial showcasing exactly what you do. And now with the second call, which is booked in for 48 hours later, we've got text reminders that are automatically going to shine the light. And in that message, it will be, hey, hope you enjoyed seeing about how Julie did X. I wanted to give you another little bit of a puzzle. Many people have a concern about X. That could be how much the cost is compared to the rewards. I want to showcase exactly how this works for you. And now we showcase something else. So then by the time we get on our second phone call, that person has sat and watched case studies. They've had reminders that have come through, which have talked about other pain points. And now when we get to the stage that person gets on for the second call, they are not just pre-qualified. They are not just interested. They've seen testimonials. We've showcased everything. And they've had a touch point every single day for 6 or 7 days, which has been deliberate based around exactly what their pain point is. Now, this alone will make a dramatic difference of exactly what you're trying to do. And this is why this is so important for what you're trying to achieve, because we've got to make sure that we're going off and we're getting things organized in the most clear and the most concise fashion. I think that'll probably